Ma'am, we need to see proof of citizenship, now.
I'm an American veteran. I served in Afghanistan. You have no right to stop me.
We have every right. Show us your papers or you're coming with us.
You want proof? Fine. But you're going to regret every second of what happens next.
The heat was crushing that Thursday afternoon at the San Antonio Lowe's. 2:15 in the afternoon, and the asphalt was shimmering with heat waves you could actually see. Across the street, the bank's thermometer glowed with triple digits, 102. Natasha Reeves had just finished loading lumber into her pickup materials for the backyard deck she'd been planning. 34 years old, dressed in a worn Spurs shirt and denim, boots covered in sawdust from the yard. Nothing about how she looked screamed military service. Maybe just the way she moved, that specific alertness that stays with you after years of watching for danger. She was about to climb into her truck when she picked up the sound. Boots hitting pavement, moving fast. Purposeful. 3 federal agents wearing tactical gear approached, their ice badges catching the sunlight. They were operating as part of a combined task force with local San Antonio cops, following up on intelligence reports about alleged document fraud rings supposedly active in the region. Their briefing had instructed them to make targeted stops at businesses where fake employment papers had supposedly been used. Whether that intelligence actually held water, or whether it just gave them permission to run sweeping enforcement actions, that question would become critical in the legal battle ahead. The security camera perched on a pole near the garden center caught every moment. The sun blazed so bright that afternoon that shadows fell sharp and compact. Perfect visibility. The timestamp showed 14 hours, 15 minutes, 37 seconds. The agent in front was Hayes, broad across the shoulders, moving like someone who'd never been refused anything. Morton and Lynn flanked him on either side. All 3 wore active body cameras. All 3 figured this would be standard procedure. Stop someone, demand identification, process them, move on. They had absolutely no clue they were walking up to a former Army intelligence officer. 2 deployments to Afghanistan. A Bronze Star for valor, trained in documentation procedures, interrogation techniques, strategic operations. They didn't know she'd spent her entire military career in environments where a single mistake could get you killed, and she'd learned to think several moves ahead of everyone around her. Whether in a room or, in this case, a parking lot. Before we go any further, drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. First time here, make sure you hit subscribe. Stories like this one deserve to be heard, and when you support us, we can keep bringing these truths forward. Ma'am, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Hayes announced it loud, his palm resting near his sidearm. The camera captured how he approached, body language aggressive, already treating her like someone guilty. We're going to need identification and citizenship verification. Natasha pivoted slowly. Careful. Hands where they could see them. Posture loose but balanced. The footage showed her expression composed, calculating, completely unafraid. What's your basis for this stop? Her tone stayed even, almost friendly. What probable cause makes you think you can detain me? Hayes moved closer. The camera framed them both now. Morton shifted to her right flank. Lynn took position on the left, textbook containment tactics. They were surrounding her, and every second was being recorded. We're running a targeted inquiry, joint task force operation. There have been reports about document fraud at commercial sites in this area. We need to confirm your immigration status. Document fraud. Natasha echoed the phrase, her gaze shifting between all 3. What specific details tie me to document fraud? What description were you working from? Because if you're stopping me purely based on what you see me standing in this parking lot, that's not a targeted inquiry. That's profiling. You spotted a black woman loading wood into her truck and figured you'd demand papers. Tell me I'm wrong. Lynn's stance shifted, uncomfortable. Hayes kept pushing, closing the distance even more, invading her personal space. The camera documented the shrinking gap. Natasha held her position without retreating or advancing. Ma'am, if your status is legal, we'll have you out of here in 5 minutes. Just produce your documents. I'm not obligated to show you anything when you lack probable cause. Natasha's voice carried across the lot, picked up by both the agent's body cameras and the security system's audio. The Fourth Amendment shields me from unlawful seizure. You stopping me with no articulable suspicion? That's unlawful. That's a constitutional violation. And badges don't give you permission to ignore my rights. Hayes's jaw clenched. The camera caught his face reddening in the brutal sun. Ma'am, when you refuse cooperation, that raises suspicion. I need ID immediately, or we're taking you in. This is where Natasha's intelligence background kicked into gear. Not the combat skills, though years of survival in hostile territory ran through every choice she made. The strategic mindset, the awareness that whoever controls the information controls how things play out. She reached for her phone. Slow movements, deliberate, making absolutely certain every motion got captured on camera. Nothing sudden, nothing they could twist into a threat. I'm recording this encounter, she said it clearly, projecting her voice. A woman heading toward the entrance stopped walking, turned to look. A man loading purchases into his vehicle paused. Paid attention. The camera caught all of them. Witnesses appearing. I'm invoking Fourth Amendment protection against unreasonable seizure. I'm also informing you I'm a United States Army veteran. Honorable discharge. 2 deployments to Afghanistan. My vehicle displays veteran plates. You can verify that right behind me. You have 0 probable cause for this stop. I'm not consenting to searches or seizures of any kind. Then she did something they weren't ready for. She hit a programmed contact on her phone. Suddenly her lawyer was live on speaker. She'd set this number up after watching ICE agents hassle her neighbor, a sweet woman named Abella who'd been a citizen for 3 decades but appeared vulnerable enough to make an easy target. The military had taught Natasha a lesson she never forgot. Hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. The dial tone barely lasted. Then a woman's voice came through, professional, razor-sharp. This is attorney Diana Velasquez with the Texas Civil Rights Project, who's speaking. The security footage captured Hayes's face. The expression of someone who just realized this wasn't going to be the quick, easy stop he'd expected. Morton glanced toward Lynn. Both agents clearly rattled. The camera recorded their body language, weight shifting, quick looks exchanged. Ma'am, you're not allowed to, Hayes began. Actually, I am. Natasha cut him off. Her voice stayed calm but carried authority. I'm being detained by federal agents without probable cause. You've refused to state any specific suspicion of criminal activity. Attorney Velasquez, I've invoked Fourth Amendment protections. They're continuing to detain me in this parking lot without legal justification. Officers, Diana Velasquez speaking, and I'm recording this conversation. The lawyer's voice came through the speaker loud enough for the security camera to capture. What's your probable cause for this stop? Be precise. What criminal activity are you investigating? Silence. The camera showed all 4 people standing in that blazing heat. Natasha, with her phone extended. 3 agents forming a semicircle around her. Seconds accumulated on the camera's timestamp. 14 hours, 18 minutes, 45 seconds. 14 hours, 18 minutes, 46 seconds. 14 hours, 18 minutes, 47 seconds. Hayes finally spoke. His voice sounded strained. We're conducting targeted inquiry as part of joint task force operations regarding document fraud in this commercial area. What specific facts connect my client to document fraud? Velasquez pressed, her voice slicing through the afternoon heat. What description were you given? What evidence indicates she's involved in any criminal conduct? What makes this stop targeted instead of random demands for papers based on appearance? More silence. The security camera kept recording the parking lot functioning around this frozen standoff. Vehicles entering and exiting. Shoppers passing with carts. Some stopping to observe. More phones coming out now. A woman wearing a Lowe's vest stood at the entrance, hand covering her mouth as she watched. A man in a truck slowed his vehicle, window down, recording with his phone. Natasha stood completely motionless, phone held out, other hand visible at her side. She wasn't resisting, wasn't running, wasn't providing them with anything they could manipulate. Just standing there in the middle of a public parking lot, forcing them to either state probable cause or admit they had nothing. The camera captured her stance, relaxed, but ready. The posture of someone trained to wait, to assess, to move only when necessary. We have discretion to verify immigration status under our operational directive. Hayes said finally, taking another step closer, his hand moving toward Natasha's arm. Should federal agents need probable cause before demanding citizenship papers? Drop your answer in the comments. This wasn't about border security. This was about whether the Constitution protects veterans the same as everyone else, or whether serving your country means nothing when your skin is black. Discretion doesn't give you unlimited power. Velasquez's voice cut through the phone. You need reasonable suspicion. Do you have it? Can you articulate it? Ma'am, you're coming with us for processing, Hayes announced, ignoring what the lawyer asked. He reached for Natasha's arm. She took one measured step backward, not aggressive, not fleeing, just maintaining space. The movement was controlled, intentional, clearly defensive rather than evasive. Don't put your hands on me. Her voice carried the authority that comes from years of issuing orders in war zones. I'm not resisting arrest. I'm not fleeing. I'm standing in a public parking lot where I have complete legal right to be. You're attempting to seize me without probable cause. Attorney Velasquez, you're recording this? Every single word. Velasquez confirmed. Officers, if you detain my client without probable cause, you're violating constitutional protections. She's invoked those rights clearly. She's given you zero reasonable suspicion of criminal activity. Any detention from this point forward is unlawful. Hayes grabbed her arm anyway. The security camera captured his hand locking around her bicep. Captured Natasha's body going rigid but not pulling away. I am not resisting, she said it loudly, projecting toward the expanding crowd of observers. I am being seized against my will without probable cause. I am a United States citizen. I am a combat veteran. I served this nation in Afghanistan, and I am documenting this constitutional violation. She allowed Hayes to pull her hands behind her back. Allowed him to snap handcuffs around her wrists, all while keeping her phone active in her hand, speaker on, her attorney listening to every sound. The security camera captured the handcuffing, showing Hayes yanking her arms back with unnecessary force. Morton looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight. Lynn scanned the crowd of witnesses, hand near his weapon, obviously anxious about the audience they'd attracted. Badge numbers. Natasha spoke steadily despite the handcuffs. All three of you. I want badge numbers, names, and your supervisor's contact information. You'll get everything at processing. Hayes said, hand on her arm, beginning to guide her toward their vehicle parked in the outer section. The camera's range didn't extend that far, but it captured them walking out of frame. Natasha, maintaining steady pace, despite being cuffed, the agents flanking her. Am I under arrest? Natasha asked, loud and unmistakable. If that's the case, what are the charges? You need to read Miranda rights if I'm under arrest. You're being detained for processing, Hayes replied. The distinction meaningless, but providing him coverage. Detention requires reasonable suspicion. Natasha countered, still composed, still projecting for the witnesses and her phone recording. Arrest requires probable cause. Which one is it? Because you don't have either. They reached the federal vehicle, a black SUV with dark-tinted windows, now outside the security camera's view. Hayes pulled the back door open. Natasha stopped moving, feet planted, not resisting. Simply refusing to cooperate. I'm not getting into that vehicle, she said clearly. I haven't been lawfully detained. I haven't been charged with anything. I am a United States citizen, and I'm exercising my right to remain here. Ma'am, get in the vehicle, Hayes ordered, his hand on her back, pushing. Years of physical training, of carrying heavy gear, of conditioning made her immovable when she decided to be. I'm not resisting, she repeated, but I'm not voluntarily following an unlawful order. If you force me into that vehicle, you're kidnapping me. Officers, Attorney Velasquez speaking. The voice came from Natasha's phone, still in her cuffed hands behind her back. You are on notice. This detention is unlawful. My client has invoked Fourth Amendment protections. She has identified herself as a United States citizen and veteran. She has committed no crime in your presence. If you remove her from this location, you are violating clearly established constitutional rights, and there will be civil and potentially criminal consequences. Hayes hesitated. Morton spoke for the first time. Maybe we should contact the supervisor. We don't need a supervisor. Hayes snapped, but his voice lacked confidence. Lynn was actively stepping back now, his body language screaming he wanted nothing to do with this. The parking lot crowd had expanded. At least 15 people watching, multiple phones out, recording. The woman in the Lowe's vest was on her phone, probably calling management or security. This was turning into a spectacle, and spectacles meant scrutiny, meant questions, meant accountability Hayes hadn't anticipated. Badge number 7294. Natasha said, reading the number on Hayes's vest, her voice carrying. Agent Hayes. Badge number 5831. Agent Morton. Badge number 6103. Agent Lynn. ICE Field Office, San Antonio. Attorney Velasquez, did you record those numbers? I recorded them. Velasquez confirmed. Officers, I'm notifying your San Antonio office immediately. Your supervisor will receive a call within 5 minutes. I strongly recommend you release my client now. The standoff continued for another 3 minutes, Natasha standing beside the SUV, handcuffed but unbroken. Refusing to get in, Hayes gripping her arm, visibly uncertain how to proceed, Morton and Lynn backing away, creating distance from Hayes's decision, the crowd watching, recording, witnessing. Hayes's radio crackled. Agent Hayes, Supervisor Thornton, stand down immediately. Release the subject. Return to the office. Hayes's face flushed embarrassment mixing with anger. The realization he'd been overruled. He removed Natasha's handcuffs roughly, the movement jerky, hostile. She rubbed her wrists, red marks already forming where the cuffs had been. I want a complaint form. Her voice still steady. I'm filing formal complaints for Fourth Amendment violations, for racial profiling, for unlawful detention, and for excessive force. You can file at the office, Hayes muttered, already moving toward the driver's door. No, I'm not going to your office, Natasha replied. I'm going to the ACLU. I'm going to my attorney's office, and then I'm suing every single one of you personally, plus the agency, for everything I can get. Because what you did today was illegal, unconstitutional, and recorded on camera. She held up her phone, still recording. Hayes drove away without responding. Morton and Lynn followed in a second vehicle, both looking shell-shocked. Natasha stood in the parking lot, rubbing her wrists, looking directly at the security camera. She knew precisely where it was, had spotted it when she first parked. Old habits from intelligence work. Always know where the surveillance is positioned. Always control the recorded narrative. Attorney Velasquez's voice came through the phone speaker. Natasha, are you okay? I'm okay, Natasha replied, her voice finally showing a slight tremor now that the immediate threat had passed. Shaken, but okay. They didn't get what they came for. What they wanted is irrelevant, Velasquez said firmly. What they did was illegal. I'm requesting the parking lot footage immediately, plus their body camera recordings, and then we're going to make them regret every second of this. The lawsuit was filed 2 weeks later, after Velasquez had secured the security camera footage and all 3 body camera recordings. Dr. Natasha Reeves versus United States of America, Agent Hayes, Agent Morton, Agent Lynn. The complaint alleged Fourth Amendment violations, unlawful seizure, detention without probable cause, excessive force, racial profiling, and selective enforcement. The evidence was crushing. Security footage showing the entire encounter, from initial approach to when they walked out of frame. Audio capturing every word, every rights invocation, every failure to articulate probable cause. Body camera footage filling the gaps, timestamps proving the detention lasted 18 minutes without justification. The government tried settling early, offered $50,000. Velasquez laughed in their faces. Your agents handcuffed a combat veteran in a parking lot for the crime of being black while buying lumber. Try again. They came back with $200,000. Still insulting. The case went to trial 15 months after the parking lot confrontation. The San Antonio courtroom was packed every single day. Veterans groups filled the gallery wearing uniforms and pins. Civil rights organizations sent representatives. Local media covered it like championship sports. And the jury, 12 Texans from varied backgrounds, watched the footage with expressions shifting from confusion to shock to outright fury. The security camera's crystal-clear view of Hayes approaching without cause, demanding papers without justification, The containment formation, 3 agents boxing her in, Lynn's discomfort, his body language showing he knew this was wrong. The body camera footage of Natasha refusing to enter the vehicle, her planted stance, her assertion of rights even in handcuffs, the footage played for 40 minutes, every angle, every moment. The afternoon sunlight making everything visible, undeniable, irrefutable. Natasha testified for 7 hours across 3 days. She walked the jury through her service record, 2 deployments to Afghanistan. Bronze Star of Valor awarded after she saved 3 soldiers during an ambush by calling in air support while under direct fire. She described the irony of serving her nation in combat zones only to be treated like a criminal in a parking lot for buying lumber. She explained her intelligence training, how she'd been taught to document everything, to control information, to stay several steps ahead. "I knew the parking lot had a security camera," she told the jury. "I positioned myself in its view. I kept my hands visible. I announced everything I was doing. I invoked my rights clearly and repeatedly. I did everything right, and they violated my constitutional protections anyway." Velasquez called Supervisor Thornton the man whose radio call had ended the parking lot standoff as a hostile witness. Under oath, he admitted the agents lacked probable cause, no reasonable suspicion, no justification for the stop. Based on the footage and the reports, this stop should never have occurred. He testified, and the courtroom erupted. The defense attempted to argue qualified immunity, tried claiming the agents had acted in good faith based on their training. Velasquez demolished that argument by introducing ICE's own training materials into evidence, showing agents were explicitly taught they needed reasonable suspicion for stops. That anonymous tips without corroboration weren't sufficient, that racial profiling was prohibited. They knew the rules, she told the jury in closing arguments. They just didn't think the rules applied when the target was a black woman in a parking lot. The jury deliberated for 6 days. Natasha spent them at home working on her deck, trying to pretend her future wasn't hanging on 12 strangers' decision. When the call came, she was in her truck, hands shaking as she answered. "Verdict's in! Get to the courthouse!" The courtroom was standing room only. The jury filed in, and the foreman, a retired teacher named Patricia Gonzalez, stood with a piece of paper that would change Natasha's life. "We find in favor of the plaintiff on all counts." The room exploded with cheers and tears. The damages phase took another week. The jury heard about Natasha's PTSD not from combat, but from being handcuffed and detained in her own hometown. They heard from other veterans about the betrayal of serving your country, only to have federal agents treat you like an enemy. They heard from economists about the value of constitutional rights, about what price should be paid when government violates them. When the jury announced the damages, even Velasquez looked stunned. $4.3 million in compensatory damages, $3.3 million in punitive damages, total $7.6 million. Hayes was terminated. Morton resigned. Lynn transferred to a desk position far from field work. In the months following the verdict, ICE San Antonio field office underwent internal review of enforcement practices. The agency issued clarifications regarding existing policies on reasonable suspicion requirements for stops and documentation necessary for targeted inquiries. While officials maintained proper procedures had always been in place, training materials were updated to emphasize Fourth Amendment protections that apply regardless of immigration status, and supervisory oversight protocols were reinforced for field operations not based on active warrants. Natasha used part of her settlement to establish the Veterans' Rights Defense Fund, providing free legal services to veterans facing discrimination. She became a national speaker on civil rights and racial profiling. Her parking lot stand becoming a case study in asserting rights under pressure. The camera footage became training material not just for police and federal agents, but for civilians learning how to assert their rights. And in San Antonio, in that Lowe's parking lot where she'd been seized without cause, the security camera still records everything in high definition. Because sometimes the cameras that watch us can also protect us when we're brave enough to stand in their view and refuse to back down. If you believe veterans deserve better, that the Fourth Amendment means something, and that standing up for your rights is the most American thing you can do, hit that subscribe and notification bell. We've got more stories coming that'll change how you see your own rights. Because freedom isn't free,